What's going on, guys? Dots here, and today I'm bringing you my updated Magicka Sorcerer PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online Deadlands patch. So thankfully, this build has not really changed from Waking Flame to Deadlands. Magicka Sorcerer has just been one of those classes for a really long time that can just have builds that last an extremely long period of time, and you very seldomly do need to change them up. And this is another situation where the build has been exactly the same from last patch to this patch, and I really did not have to make any changes. The build feels just as effective now as it did previously, which makes me really happy to see. So if you have liked this build in the past, it has pretty much stayed the same, but I do want to go over it today for those of you who maybe have not seen it before and are looking for something new to try on your Magsorg. Now, as I do always say, guys, this is just what I like, what I use, and what works for me. If you would like to run something else in your Magsorg or want to change anything on this build to fit your playstyle, go right ahead. This is just personally what I have found enjoyable. But really quick, before we get in today's video, I just want to talk about a company that I am affiliated with called TubeBuddy. In case you are a content creator or you do make YouTube videos, or you're trying to maybe get into making YouTube videos, this is an extremely helpful free browser extension that you can add to Chrome, Firefox, etc. that helps you do a lot of the metadata things with YouTube, whether it be tags, descriptions, thumbnails, all that stuff. TubeBuddy helps you organize those things in a nice fashion to help optimize your video's performance. I have personally used it for an extremely long time and definitely recommend it. And if you do download it from my link in the description below, you can help support the channel by giving me some kickback if you do ever upgrade to one of their pro plans, which does give you more features and access to more stuff. I personally am a pro user myself and cannot possibly recommend it enough. So again, if you want to support the channel, feel free to check out that TubeBuddy link in the description below. Now, kicking off the build, guys, we're still using the same monster set that we were previously, and we are using Bloodspawn with a line of stamina recovery. And when you take damage, you have 6% chance to generate 13 ultimate and increase your resistance for 5 seconds. So Bloodspawn is just going to be a really solid monster set for this build, giving us that ultimate generations. One of the biggest things we like about it. This is a relatively beefy build, surprisingly, for a Magsorg. I actually play my Magsorg a little bit on the tankier side, and so actually having that resistance from Bloodspawn 2 just kind of helps give us that little bit of extra mitigation we need to play really aggressively. Like when I play this build, I'm zipping all over the place, like getting up in people's face. Like I'm not messing around. And Bloodspawn really just kind of helps enable a lot of that tankiness by giving us a solid amount of resistance. So really like Bloodspawn for that reason. One of our main 5 pieces for the build is going to be Necropotence. So this is just going to give us 3 lines of Magicka, and then while you have a pet active, your Magicka is increased by another 3,000. So we do run the Matriarch on this build as our primary heal. So because of that, we will literally always have a pet active. So it just makes it really easy to take advantage of Necro, which gives us an extremely solid 42k Magicka pool. You know, Magsorg does use shields quite a bit for defense as well, which we do run a shield on this build. And so because of that, stacking Magicka on the Magsorg has always been an extremely efficient way of gathering both offense and defense. So we do that here today with Necropotence. And our other 5 piece on the build is going to be Toryg's Pact. So Toryg's Pact helps enable a lot of tankiness through those 2 lines of armor, which is really nice. So between those 2 lines of armor, the Bloodspawn armor, they're surprisingly tanky. Line of health, and then this decreases the weapon enchantment cooldown by 33% and increases non-oblivion weapon damage potency by 45%. So a lot of our damage in this build is actually going to be coming from our enchants. So our front, both of our staves are going to be infused. If you look at that enchant tooltip, that's a 6.5 shock damage tooltip on that front bar staff, and this is going to be proccing constantly. So this is going to be a lot of pressure coming from this enchant. This is also going to constantly give us minor vulnerability because shock damage has a chance to give that, and we're going to be proccing this a ton, which means that there's a high likelihood that our target will have vulnerability on them, just increasing the damage that we deal to them even more. So this is a really big portion of our offense. And another reason that I do this is because I actually run an ice staff on the back bar with a absorb Magicka glyph. Now on top of this, also dealing a decent amount of extra magic damage, this restores 668 Magicka every single time it deals damage. And so because we have a ground AoE on the back bar of this build, and the way that ground AoEs and enchants work is that, you know, if I put down a ground AoE on my back bar, right, and then swap to my front bar, As this ground AoE is dealing damage to my enemies, that back bar glyph is still proccing. It's still giving me resources back. It's still dealing extra magic damage. And so a lot of our sustain is going to come from that wall of elements, and is why we can run such a low amount of recovery, and we can just constantly be getting that Magicka back as it ticks. This is really effective, especially in battlegrounds where the spaces are a little bit tighter, and so you can lock a lot of people in that wall of elements and just gain Magicka back, gain all the bonuses of the ice staff, and just pepper people with your damage. And I find it to be an extremely effective combination. Now, in terms of weights and traits, I do run a 3-3-1 in this build. We run 1, 2, 3 pieces of heavy, 1, 2, 3 pieces of light, and then 1 piece of medium. That typically is like my favorite ratio for a lot of my Magicka classes, so that is what I'm running here. I do run 4 pieces of impen. Find out 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of impen, 1 reinforced on the chest, and then 2 well fitted. I actually really like well fitted for Mag Sorc. I find it to be extremely useful. You know, there are just some times that you really don't want to take a hit. You know, in cap out of stealth, you know, spectral bow from a Nightblade, and so being able to kind of dodge roll a little bit more, I find to be really, really, really useful. And so I like the extra dodging on my Mag Sorc. So I do run those 2 well fitted pieces for that reason. We then also run triple arcane. Again, we are trying to stack up that Magicka a little bit, so for that reason we do want to go ahead and run the triple arcane. We run 1 spell damage and 2 Magicka recovery for our glyphs, and then on our front bar we run an infused shock glyph on an inferno staff with an infused magic damage absorb magic glyph on the back bar on an ice staff. The ice staff is primarily for the wall of elements because, again, we want to keep people held in that as long as possible. Plus, the ice staff does give us some ability to block should we actually need to. So that is what the traits and all of that is looking like it's set up. So in terms, that was a sentence. So in terms of our skills, we're moving into our first one. We are running Crushing Shock. So we're going to deal flame, frost, and shock damage instantaneously. And then enemies hit while casting this are interrupted and set off balance and stunned for 3 seconds. I actually really, really like Crushing Shock. Crushing Shock can also interrupt just a lot of people's crap, like especially like if you're playing against like a snipe blade or something. You know, a lot of them don't expect to suddenly be interrupted when they're trying to snipe you. And Crushing Shock just is really, really nice to kind of have that. You know, the interrupt comes in handy a lot. Plus, because you are dealing all 3 elemental damage types, you have a chance to proc the flaming status effect, the shield status effect, vulnerability again from this. So it just gives us a little bit of extra kind of you know, status effect potency that we can get from this. You could also run elemental weapon here if you like to, but I personally do prefer Crushing Shock for this build myself. Our next skill is going to be Crystal Frags, dealing about 11k magic damage. And after we use this, your next non-ultimate ability cast within 3 seconds will cost 10% less. But the big reason and the only time you're really going to cast frags, casting a magic ability has a 35% chance of causing your next crystal frags to be instant, deal 66% more damage, and cost 50% less magicka. You'll pretty much never want to use this unless it's procced. The proc is where a lot of the damage comes from. That's where the instant cast comes from. Otherwise, it's going to have a cast time. It'll also cost way more. So you basically never want to use this unless it is procced. But when this hits super freaking hard. One of our primary heals on the build is going to be the Matriarch. The Matriarch also adds a body in front of us as well. Deals some shock damage. And then when you activate the Twilight's Matriarch special ability, it will heal 2 friendly targets for 12k and itself for 6k. It's an extremely strong burst heal. It will really, really, really keep you topped off. It is the burst heal for the build. And honestly, for the longest time, I was like really against running pets for Mag Sorc. But once I actually put this on, like the potency of it was very noticeable. So Matriarch is extremely strong as a burst heal. And because we don't run a Resto Staff, it is what we need to use. We also do use Haunting Curse. So Haunting Curse will deal magic damage to the target and magic damage to all other enemies near the target 3.5 seconds afterwards. And then the curse will continue to haunt the enemy and explode a second time, basically doing the exact same thing after 8.5 seconds. Now, even though this is a pet build, I do not use Daedric Curse. I would rather have the Haunting Curse deal, you know, that second bit of damage, that extra damage coming from it, because this is a huge part of our burst combo, as opposed to like just kind of boosting the damage that comes from our healing pet. Like, again, we're not using a damaging pet. This isn't a pet build. You know, this is the healer pet. And so I'd rather just have the benefits that Haunting Curse brings as opposed to running Daedric Curse and like maybe increasing the Matriarch's damage by a little bit. So I personally do prefer this, and I do think it is the better morph for the build. And this is a huge part of our burst combo between frags, curse, and then power overload. So charge your fist with the power of the storm, replacing your light and heavy attacks with new, stronger abilities. These will deal 12k shock damage to enemies up to 32 meters away. And you could also like hold your heavy attack to do like an AoE like electrocute thing. So basically, the Mongo combo of this build is going to be, assuming that you have curse up on your target, you have ultimate ready, and your frags procced. You are going to streak through your target. You are going to light attack, crystal frags, in with power overload active. So when you do that, the power overload is going to hit, your light attack is going to hit, your Torag's enchant damage is going to hit, your crystal frags is going to hit, and your haunting curse will pop, assuming you time it all correctly. That is so much damage happening in a singular instance. It is what makes Magsork so strong, is the amount of just damage that you can stack in one instance that opponent does not have time to react to, and it's just a big clap of damage. And Streak will enable that, because Streak is going to be our primary CC for the build, and this cannot be blocked. So if you have a pesky Mag DK that won't drop their block, you can literally just streak through them and then frickin' one bang them with this combo. It is very, very, very potent. This is also a really just good movement skill. It is one of the best movement skills in the game. People are gonna have a lot of trouble keeping up with you as you use this. Just keep in mind that it does cost more magicka the more you use it, so it can get pretty costly pretty fast. Now I actually have to like mosey my way back to where I was to my building spot, dude. All right. But anyway, onto the back bar. So this is where a lot of our sustain is going to come from, Blockade of Frost. This is going to deal frost damage every second and apply Frost Safeguard for 6 seconds to you and nearby allies, giving you a nice little damage shield, which is pretty cool. And then we also have chilled enemies become frozen and immobilized for 4 seconds. So this is just a way to kind of keep targets at bay, keep people away from you. But again, this is going to be a huge source of just consistent overtime pressure as well as sustain for us, because we are going to be having that infused absorb magicka glyph proccing constantly. So this is a really, really, really effective skill. This is good in towers. This is good in battlegrounds. It's just, you just got to position it right, because again, it is a ground AoE, and so you'll be a little bit, you'll have to place this down more if you do move around, but if you place it in the right spot, it's really effective and will give you a lot of benefits. Our primary shield for the build is going to be Hardened Ward. This gives you a 16.7k damage shield for 6 seconds. Because we do run a bigger magical pool, again, we can stack this shield up relatively high. So this is going to be our primary, like, proactive defense. You're trying to use shields before you take damage, and then you want to heal yourself after you take damage. So this is going to be our proactive defense. We have Matriarch again on the back bar for the same reasons I mentioned. You do have to double bar pets, otherwise they will be unsummoned. Our other heal that we have is going to be Dark Conversion. So this will restore 8,200 health and 3,600 magicka instantly, and then an additional 2,400 magicka over 20 seconds. So this is just another heal that we have. It converts our stamina into healing and magicka over time. Definitely something good to use as you're running a little bit low on magicka. It just keeps a constant ticking flow of magicka coming into your character, so it's an extremely good skill to have. We also do run Boundless Storm. So Boundless Storm is going to be our armor buff. This is a source of major resolve, gives us major expedition, and then zaps enemies nearby us. It also just looks, I say this in every build, and every build time like I make this, and I always will, it looks really, really, really cool. One of the coolest looking armor buffs in the game. So I know some people like to run Shudan on their mag sorts, but come on, look at this, dude. You got to run this. It looks super sick. So we run Boundless Storm for that reason. My back bar ultimate is going to be Summon Charged Atronach. I do like the Charged Atro for the back bar, because if I'm going for a single target burst, I like to use the power overload. But if I have a lot of targets stacked up around me, I could drop this and it deals a lot of damage. So its arrival will deal about 9k shock damage, stun enemies for 3 seconds. The Atronach will then zap the closest enemy, dealing 4,300 shock damage every second, and periodically it does a big slam for 8,900 shock damage around it. So this is what I use for AoE. If I am have a lot of people around me and I need to slam a bunch of people, I drop the Charged Atronach. I then play like a massive degenerate and just bob in and out of the Atro to make me really hard to hit. So typically, if there's only one person or a couple people, I'll just take an overload and just bang people instantly and take them off the map. But if there's a lot more people stacked up, I find the Charged Atro to be a little bit better. It adds that body on the field. It gives really good AoE pressure, as well as giving a nice AoE stun, which can line some people up for some good initial burst. Now, in terms of our attributes and stats and all that stuff, we are 42k Magicka, about 28k health, 18.6k maximum stam, only 1,000 magic recovery with the back bar glyph being infused Torrings. We don't really need much more. 3,100 spell damage, 1,800 spell resist with 15.8k physical resist, and then 1,800 critical resistance. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, because it did get mentioned in my last build video, was my pen. I know the pen for this build is definitely on the lower side, but like, I'm gonna be honest, I really don't have a problem killing people. I feel like Magsork and a lot of builds that I have made for Magsork, I don't really feel like I need like super high pen, to be honest. I feel like the class just has so much damage that it really doesn't feel all that bad running lower penetration. If you are like, I don't agree with you and I want to run more pen, what you could potentially do is drop like something like Haunting Curse and then run Ellie Drain instead. And then because you'll have Ellie Drain, you could possibly replace one or both of your Magicka recovery glyphs on your gear with like spell damage glyphs, because you're gonna have minor Magicka steal. But I personally just find the curse, frags, overload, light attack, enchant like damage package to deal so much damage that like having like slightly lower pen doesn't really feel like it's the end of the world. Plus, so many people nowadays are running percent mitigation anyway, so you know, I just wanted to bring that up because people did mention that. If you want to run more pen, go ahead. But like, I'm not going to lie, I feel perfectly fine running this amount. Don't really have any problems. Mundus-wise, we do use the Mage. Again, we are going for maximum Magicka, so Mage helps with that. And then food-wise, we use the Bewitched Sugar Skulls for that tri-stat food. Don't really feel the need for sustained food, so we just run Bewitched Sugar Skulls for that reason. Race, I go with High Elf. I would just recommend any damage race. Honestly, you could do High Elf, Dark Elf, be perfectly fine. If you want to, you could also maybe run a sustained race like Breton and then drop those Magicka recovery glyphs if you're so inclined. But personally, I think the damaging races work really, really well for the Magsork, but race is extremely customizable for Magsork and totally up to you. Champion point wise, we run Deadly Aim, single target damage increase. Most of our, basically all of our attacks are single target, so we run Deadly Aim, very helpful with that. Most of our attacks are also direct damage, so Mastered Arms also buffs that up as well. We use Duelist Rebuff for single target damage reduction, as well as Ironclad for direct damage reduction, since these two CP pretty much cover most of what we're scared of as a PvPer. We also run Bastion. This is going to increase the effectiveness of our damage shields by 15%, so it's going to make the shield off our Wall of Elements as well as our Hardened Ward even stronger. We are also going to use Relentlessness, so being stunned or feared will cause you to gain major protection for 3 seconds, reducing your damage taken by 10%. This is really, really good. You're most vulnerable after you get CC'd, and this gives us a huge, huge percent mitigation boost after we are crowd controlled. We also do Sustained by Suffering for increased recovery. Basically, while you have a negative effect, which will always be present in PvP, so this is just a flat 150 recovery bonus. And then we also use Pain's Refuge. This reduces your damage taken by 2% for every 2 negative effects on you, up to a maximum of 20%. So, you know, I like to 1vx obviously, and so Pain's Refuge is a really, really efficient stat for our star for that, because you're gonna have a lot of people attacking you, a lot of debuffs on you, and because of that, Pain's Refuge can stack up really high, really fast, so this will give you a lot of damage reduction. Now, in terms of oh, I just realized I didn't talk about Potion. So Potion, we do use Spell Power Pots. This is going to give us Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, and then Major Intellect. So we want to use this Potion, keep it up basically at all times, because we're getting 3 very important buffs from it. So you definitely do want to grab that. Now, in terms of a rotation for the build, I pretty much kind of explained the offensive rotation, but I'll go over it one more time. Basically, you want to just normally just focus on light attack, crushing shock until you proc crystal frags, and that's basically when you're ready to party. So you're going to want to do Haunting Curse on your enemy, again assuming frags is procced, power overload, streak through, turn around, and then light attack frags. When you light attack and frag, the like if you use the frag to cancel the light attack, you'll get light attack damage, Torrix Pact enchant damage, power overload damage, crystal frag damage, and then if you hit that all to time with the Haunting Curse actually exploding, you're going to be dealing all of that damage instantaneously all at once. And so it is a lot of damage coming out extremely quick. So that is like your offensive goal, and Crushing Shock is basically what's going to prep crystal frags to actually proc it. But when you're out and about, you obviously want to maintain Boundless Storm on yourself when you're in a BG as well. You want to maintain Elemental Blockade on the ground. A lot of your sustain's going to be coming from it. You're going to be able to get all of the status effects associated with Blockade of Frost on people. You're going to keep them slow, rooted, all that good jazz. And then, like I said, you're just going to light attack and force pulse and then go through that combo I just described. Defensively, your goal, if you feel like you're going to be taking a lot of damage, you want to streak away. Then you want to heal yourself with the Matriarch, and then you could also heal yourself with Dark Conversion as well, giving you Magicka back as well as some extra HP. This is also just good if you feel that you need more Magicka. Just Dark Conversioning will be... Dark Conversioning, I think that's a word, will be good for that. And then again, remember, Hardened Ward is proactive defense. So a lot of, like, before you go into a fight, use Hardened Ward. You don't want to use it afterwards. You know, you want to heal yourself afterwards. And then Hardened Ward will protect your heals by you overlaying it on top of those. So you have a proactive defense and then reactive defense. So use them accordingly in each situation. And then again, if you have a lot of enemies stacked up, that's when you're going to want to use Summon Charge Atronach instead of Power Overload, just because I think it's going to be more useful in that situation. But I think on that note, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Mag Sorc covered. Let me tell you, man. Mag Sorc build still feeling good. It makes me really happy that made this build a couple patches ago. It's still alive. It's still kicking. Still doing really well. Every time I hop into this guy and mess around, I always have a really good time. So if you're looking for a fun Mag Sorc build that's very effective and will pretty much stand the test of time and last a lot of patches, I think this build will be good for you. And if you guys do like it, I appreciate if you left a like on the video. Any questions about the build, feel free to leave a comment below. And guys, for more ESO builds as well as other MMORPG content, feel free to hit the sub button as well as the bell to keep those notifications on. And guys, if you want to support the channel, if you are an aspiring content creator and you want, a really good extension to help you out with your YouTube videos, feel free to check out that TubeBuddy link in the description below. Again, it helps support me. You got a great tool to help you grow your YouTube channel, and yeah, benefits for everybody. But anyway, guys, appreciate you stopping by today. Thank you so much. Really does mean a lot. As always, I'm Dots Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.